The gray sky loomed over the small college town in Texas, its streets slick with rain. Mark Davis, a 23-year-old law student, trudged along the sidewalk, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His face was etched with worry, his dark eyes scanning the ground as if searching for answers in the cracks of the pavement. The weight of his final year of law school, a part-time job at a local diner, and the avalanche of debts left by his late father pressed down on him. Each day, the world seemed to tighten its grip, threatening to suffocate him. His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him out of his spiraling thoughts. "Mark Davis speaking," he answered, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Brooks," came a composed, authoritative voice. "I'd like to meet with you. It's regarding your financial situation." Mark frowned, stopping in his tracks as raindrops pattered against his hood. "I'm sorry, who are you? How do you know about?" "I know enough," she interrupted smoothly. "Let's meet at Brooks Bistro, 7 p.m. It's important." The call ended before Mark could protest. Confused but intrigued, he glanced at his cracked phone screen, the time glowing 4:32 p.m. He had just enough time to finish his shift at the diner and make it to the upscale cafe. The rain fell harder as he arrived, his worn jacket doing little to keep him dry. Stepping inside, he was greeted by warm lighting and the rich aroma of fresh coffee. At a corner table sat Eleanor Brooks, a striking woman with silver hair styled impeccably, dressed in a tailored suit that radiated wealth and power. "Mark," she greeted, gesturing for him to sit. Her tone was calm yet commanding, her piercing blue eyes locking onto his. Mark hesitated, then took the seat opposite her, his damp clothes clinging uncomfortably. "Mrs. Brooks, what's this about?" "Straight to the point." "Good." She sipped her tea, her movements deliberate. "Mark, I know about your debts, the ones your father left behind. I know you're barely scraping by. I'm here to offer a solution." Mark's brows furrowed, his hands tightening around the strap of his backpack. "And what would that be?" She set down her cup, her gaze unwavering. "Marry me." The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal. Mark blinked, certain he'd misheard. "Excuse me." "You heard me," she said, her voice steady. "This isn't about romance. It's a business arrangement. I'll pay off all your debts, ensure your financial security, and in return, you'll be my husband." Mark let out a disbelieving laugh, running a hand through his wet hair. "You're serious? Why me? You don't even know me." Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her eyes glinting with purpose. "Exactly. You're young, unattached, and desperate enough to consider this. I don't need love, Mark. I need a companion, someone to share my name, my estate, and nothing more. Think of it as a contract." Mark shook his head, his mind racing. "This is insane. What's in it for you?" Her expression softened, just for a moment. "I've spent my life alone, Mark. No children, no family left. I want companionship, even if it's just for appearances. And I want control of my legacy. A husband will help solidify that." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. "I can't. I need time to think." "Of course," she replied coolly, unfazed. "But don't take too long. The offer doesn't stand forever." Mark walked home through the rain, his clothes soaked through, his thoughts a chaotic swirl. The modest apartment he shared with his mother and younger sister was a stark contrast to the opulence of Brooks Bistro. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, the dim light casting shadows across his mother's pale, tired face. The cost of her medical treatments had drained their savings, and his sister's college tuition loomed like a dark cloud. "Mark," his mother said softly after he explained Eleanor's proposition, her voice frail but resolute. "I know it sounds unthinkable, but if she's willing to help, maybe it's worth considering." Mark stared at his hands, torn between pride and desperation. "You're asking me to marry a woman I don't love just to solve our problems." "I'm asking you to save yourself," she said, her voice trembling. "To save us." The words lingered, heavy with truth. The following morning, Mark returned to the bistro. Eleanor was already there, her demeanor as composed as ever, her tablet glowing under her manicured fingers. "You've decided," she said, not looking up. Mark took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "I'll do it." She smiled faintly, setting down her tablet. "Good. The arrangements will be made immediately." A week later, Mark stood in a small courthouse, dressed in a tailored suit Eleanor had provided. The ceremony was quiet, witnessed only by Eleanor's lawyer and a notary. As they exchanged vows, Mark couldn't shake the unease in his chest. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor turned to him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Davis," she said. As they left the courthouse, rain drizzling once more, Mark caught his reflection in a puddle. Have I just saved my family, or sold my soul? Asterisk. The gates to Eleanor Brooks's estate creaked open as Mark's cab rolled up the long, winding driveway. The house loomed ahead, a sprawling mansion that could pass for a museum, its towering columns and pristine stone facade exuding old money. But its windows were dark, lifeless, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Mark stepped out, suitcase in hand, feeling like a visitor in someone else's dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Eleanor greeted him in the grand foyer, her demeanor as polished as ever. "Welcome, Mr. Davis," she said, the formal address sending a shiver down his spine. "I trust you'll find everything to your satisfaction. Dinner is at 7 o'clock. He nodded mutely, following a housekeeper who led him to his room. It was opulent, with a king-sized bed, antique furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. Despite its luxury, the room felt cold, untouched by human warmth. That evening, Mark sat stiffly at the long dining table, Eleanor at the other end, dressed in a silk blouse and pearls. The food was extravagant, prepared by an unseen chef and served by staff who moved like ghosts. "I trust you're settling in," Eleanor said, cutting into her filet mignon with surgical precision. "It's different," Mark replied cautiously. "This place is huge. Feels like I'll get lost." Eleanor smirked. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, you're here." Mark bristled at her bluntness. "You didn't mention much about your late husband before." Her knife paused mid-cut. She dabbed her mouth with a napkin before speaking. "He was a businessman, like your father. Their paths crossed once or twice." Her tone darkened. "But as you might imagine, not all encounters end well." Mark's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, her eyes sharp. "Let's just say unfinished business has a way of lingering." She picked up her wine glass. "You'll soon understand why I chose you." Her cryptic words left Mark uneasy. After dinner, he wandered the halls of the estate, the silence broken only by the faint creak of floorboards. He passed several locked doors, their brass handles gleaming in the dim light, each one seeming to whisper secrets. As the days passed, the staff's hushed conversations and avoided glances fueled his growing unease. He overheard snippets that made his stomach twist. Why him? Does he even know? She never does anything without a reason. Asterisk. One evening, while pacing the library, Mark noticed Eleanor's desk, papers strewn across its surface alongside a small, ornate key. It gleamed under the desk lamp, its intricate design catching his eye. His gaze darted around the room, no one was there. Heart pounding, he reached for it. The key was heavier than expected, cool to the touch. Could it unlock one of those mysterious doors? Slipping it into his pocket, he felt a surge of reckless curiosity. That night, the mansion was shrouded in stillness as Mark crept down the hall, the key a lead weight in his pocket. He approached a door he'd noticed earlier, its ornate handle gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Glancing over his shoulder, he turned the key in the lock. The soft click echoed like a gunshot, sending a chill down his spine. The room was a time capsule, frozen in another era. Dusty furniture and faded wallpaper surrounded him. Photographs in tarnished silver frames lined a table. Eleanor is a young woman, radiant and smiling, a man who must have been her late husband, Harold, and another couple Mark didn't recognize. But it was the stack of papers on the desk that drew him in. Mark flipped through them, his eyes widening. Legal documents detailed failed business deals between Harold Brooks and Mark's father, accusing him of fraud. A letter in sharp, slanted handwriting read, "You ruined everything. My family was left with nothing because of your lies." His breath hitched when he found a marriage license, his name and Eleanor's, dated weeks before their wedding, far earlier than he'd known. On the desk lay an old, leather-bound diary. Mark hesitated, then opened it. Eleanor's entries revealed a calculated plan. "I will take everything from him, just as his father did to me. He will be my pawn." Asterisk. The door creaked behind him. "Enjoying yourself?" Eleanor's voice was icy, cutting through the shadows. Mark spun around, guilt and fear written across his face. Eleanor, you thought you'd find answers here. She stepped into the room, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. Curiosity killed the cat, Mark. Why did you really marry me? He demanded, his voice low but firm. Is this about my father? Some kind of revenge? Her eyes hardened, her composed facade cracking. It's not your place to ask questions. Do what you're told, and you'll leave this marriage better off. Isn't that enough? Mark's fists clenched. You've lied to me, manipulated me. This isn't a marriage, it's a trap. Eleanor's lips curled into a faint, venomous smile. A trap. Maybe you should have thought twice before signing those papers. You're just like your father, blind to the damage you cause until it's too late. Mark glared at her, the weight of his father's legacy crushing him. If you hated him so much, why take it out on me? I had nothing to do with what he did to your family. Eleanor stared at him, the silence stretching like a taut string. Finally, she turned on her heel. You're in over your head, Mark. Stay out of matters that don't concern you. Mark lay awake that night, Eleanor's words haunting him. The diary's revelations and the documents, accusations painted a grim picture. Why had she gone to such lengths to entangle him? Was it really just revenge? His thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of Eleanor's voice from her study. Creeping closer, he pressed his ear against the door. Make sure the transfer is complete, she said, her tone sharp. We can't let him back out now. Time is running out. Mark's blood ran cold. Whatever was happening, he was in deeper than he'd imagined. The next morning, he sought out Mr. Harris, the estate's head butler, a man whose calm demeanor suggested he'd seen more than he let on. Mr. Harris, I need your help. Something isn't right here. The older man regarded him with a steady gaze. I was wondering how long it would take before you came to me. You know something, don't you? About Eleanor, about all of this. Mr. Harris hesitated. You're not the first young man to be drawn into Eleanor's world, Mark. She's clever, resourceful, and ruthless when it comes to her goals. My advice: watch your back. Mark's chest tightened. Why are you still here if you know what she's capable of? A flicker of regret crossed Mr. Harris' face. Some of us don't have the luxury of walking away. Determined to find a way out, Mark contacted Peter, his law school friend, under the guise of catching up. Peter, hypothetically, if someone signed a contract under coercion or false pretenses, is there a way to void it? Peter's voice was cautious. Hypothetically, yes, but it depends on the evidence. Why? Are you in trouble? Just a class project, Mark deflected. Thanks, man. Late one night, while Eleanor was away, Mark rifled through her desk and found an envelope addressed to his father. The letter inside was a scathing condemnation, accusing him of embezzlement and fraud that led to the Brooks family's ruin and Harold's death. You left us with nothing. My husband's heart couldn't take the stress, and he's gone because of you. I will see to it that your family pays. Asterisk. Mark's stomach churned. Eleanor's actions weren't just about reclaiming her fortune, they were about revenge, fueled by decades of pain. He resolved to act. He couldn't let her use him as a pawn. The air in the estate felt charged as Mark paced the library. A private investigator he'd hired confirmed the truth. Harold Brooks had been swindled by Mark's father in a fraudulent real estate deal, stripping the Brooks family of their wealth. Harold's heart attack soon after left Eleanor consumed by bitterness. Her marriage to Mark was a calculated move to make his family suffer. With Peter's help, Mark compiled evidence from Eleanor's office and the investigator's findings, uncovering her current shady business dealings, falsified reports and illegal partnerships to rebuild her empire. This is enough to take her down, Peter said. But be careful. If she realizes you're onto her, there's no telling what she'll do. The next morning, Mark confronted Eleanor in the grand sitting room, the evidence tucked in his bag. We need to talk. She raised an eyebrow. Is that so? What could be so urgent? I know everything, Mark said, pulling out the documents. About my father, about Harold, about what you've been doing to rebuild your fortune. Eleanor's calm faltered, her eyes flicking to the papers. You've been snooping again, haven't you? I understand you were wronged, Mark said, his voice rising. But what about the people you've hurt? What about me? I didn't deserve this. Her jaw tightened. My family deserved to lose everything. My husband deserved to die of stress and heartbreak while your father lived comfortably. Don't talk to me about fairness. Mark's hands shook as he held up the evidence. Revenge won't bring him back, Eleanor. You've spent your life consumed by this, ruining innocent people. When does it end? For a fleeting moment, regret flickered in her eyes. You remind me of him, you know, Harold. That same fire, that same stubbornness. I didn't expect to feel anything for you, Mark. Then stop this, he pleaded. Let it go before it's too late. Before she could respond, car tires crunched on the gravel outside. Uniformed police officers entered, followed by Peter. Eleanor Brooks, we have a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with fraud and conspiracy. Eleanor's face hardened as she looked at Mark. You called them. You left me no choice, he said, his voice steady. As the officers led her away, she turned back one last time. You may think you've won, Mark. But revenge isn't so easily undone. Be careful it doesn't consume you too. Dash dash dash. The gavel's sharp bang echoed through the courtroom, signaling the end of Eleanor's trial. Mark sat in the back row, watching as the once commanding woman faced the consequences of her actions. His testimony had helped reduce her sentence, not out of sympathy, but from an understanding of the pain that had driven her. Eleanor met his gaze briefly, offering a faint, almost apologetic nod. Days later, Mark was summoned to the estate one final time. The grand house, once intimidating, now felt empty. The estate lawyer handed him a letter in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. It was never about the money, Mark. It was about closure. Harold deserved justice, but I lost sight of what mattered. You've shown me the capacity to move forward. This estate is no longer a monument to my pain. Use it well. Asterisk. Mark sold the estate, its grandeur a gilded cage for both him and Eleanor. The proceeds paid off his family's debts, freeing his mother from the shadow of his father's mistakes. With the remainder, he established a scholarship fund in Harold Brooks's name, honoring the man caught in the feud between their families. Returning to law school, Mark felt a sense of purpose. The weight of Eleanor's parting words lingered, would the shadow of their shared past ever fade? But as he stepped into the lecture hall, sunlight streaming through the windows, he knew he was no longer a pawn. He was free to forge his own path, determined to use his education for good, to ensure no one else would be trapped by the chains of vengeance.